Drinking buddies. With the bourbon industry and rye industry booming tremendously in the United States and around the world, it has caused a lot of hype. And sometimes there are bottles that don't necessarily live up to that hype. You know, in the past, I've done things like, alternatives to Pappy Van Winkle or alternatives to allocated products. But today I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm talking about 5 bottles that I think are way overhyped that might not even be worth buying because there's better stuff out there. So let's get right into it.
I'm your drinking buddy.
Well, drinking buddies, I thought I would start this off at number 5 with something kind of controversial. I might get some heat in the comments for this one because it is a really beloved bottle in the bourbon and rye community. I saw it on a number of lists last year, and people talk about it like it is the new gold standard when it comes to rye. And I am not a huge fan. I feel like it is an overrated bottle and it's expensive, and we'll pour a little bit of it. But today for bottle number 5, overrated bottles, I'm talking about Barrel Seagrass. So many people had this on their list of the best bourbons of last year. The best bottles from last year. It is a rye, of course, not a bourbon. But they take that rye and they finish it in Martinique rum casks, Madeira and apricot brandy barrels. And what I think you end up with is a rye that smells like apricot brandy, tastes like peaches, like peach rings, those candies, and apricots. And I don't really know what I'm drinking here, but it doesn't really taste like rye to me. I get that rye finish a little bit on the end with the butterscotch notes, but it doesn't really taste like the rum really did anything to it, and I don't really feel like the Madeira casks really did much to it. And I feel like those apricot brandy casks really took over personally for me. Before I continue to trash on the bottles, I'm not intentionally trying to trash on them. If you love this bottle, great. I'm just trying to avoid people like me who went and picked this out because it's been so hyped and was only disappointed. If you're new to drinking rye, I would highly recommend you go out and pick out Willet. Recently we did some blinds at my house with some friends, and boy did this do well. And I was shocked with how much I loved it. Now the barrel is sitting at 119 proof. You're only losing a little bit of proof points on here because this is 108. This bottle is a little bit cheaper. I can readily find it at my local Total Wine. I don't know how hard it is to find in some markets, but I can readily find it in my local Total Wine. And I had actually personally avoided it for a while because I don't really care for Willet bourbon that much. But they make good rye. This is a really excellent bottle loaded up with spearmint notes, as well as some other herbaceous qualities to it. Vanilla, baking spices, just loaded with flavor, great finish. Highly recommend this bottle. So this is going to be my recommendation that you buy instead of the Barrel Seagrass. For number 4, we're going to go ahead and talk about a bottle that I think is a good bottle. It's actually a bottle that helped get me into bourbon. But now that I know that there's so many other great finished bourbons out there, it's kind of starting to fall flat for me. And that's going to be Angel's Envy. Is it a good entry-level bourbon? Yes. Is it a good bourbon overall? Yes. But proof's a little low, 86.6. And now that I'm really getting into my bourbon journey, pretty much like most things to be over 90. And we have this wonderful beauty here that I have talked about before, admittingly. Woodinville port finished. This is a divisive bottle. Not everybody loves it, but it is a better product than the Angel's Envy. Now, I might be doing something odd here because I'm recommending a bottle that is arguably harder to find than the other one, but that's not my purpose by pointing out this bottle. There are other great port finished bourbons out there. This is the point of me mentioning Angel's Envy. Just don't think of Angel's Envy as the end-all be-all port finished bourbon. There are other great port finish bourbons out there. Thomas More, you know, they're out there. Look for those, try those, and maybe skip Angel's Envy. If you're a bourbon drinker for a long time, that 86 proof is probably not going to do that much for you anymore. And from my understanding, it doesn't sit in those port barrels for very long. It doesn't really pick up a ton of port flavor. Something like the Thomas More sits in those barrels for a considerably longer amount of time. I don't know how long it sits in, this one sits in there, but I believe it to be longer. Angel's Envy, good bottle, but you can find better port finish bourbons out there. So for me, Angel's Envy is a little overrated. Bottle number 3 that is a little bit overrated, and we can definitely get better products out there. Kind of pains me to say this one for how long I had to hunt for the darn thing. Weller Special Reserve. Now don't get me wrong, I actually like the other Weller products I've tasted. Weller 12 and Weller Antique 107 are 2 of my favorite all-time bourbons. I'm not a Weller hater, I love Weller. But that's becoming a bottle that's being sold at liquor stores for $100, and it is no better than Maker's 46, and it's no better than the bourbon that I'm gonna recommend you buy instead, and that's gonna be Smooth Ambler Big Level. I had to rinse my glass because I want to have a little bit of this one. So this bottle, the retail is actually higher than the Weller Special Reserve. However, you're never going to find this one over retail, or at least you shouldn't find this one over retail, or much over retail. I can buy this bottle at Walmart in my area. And some people out there, they got off the Smooth Ambler train when they stopped using the MGP distillate, or at least they don't use it as much anymore in their products. They distill most of their stuff in West Virginia now. It's not sourced as much as it used to be. And a lot of people like that older MGP stuff they were using, and I'm sure that was great, but this is really good too. And to my knowledge, I don't believe they were using a wheated bourbon before then. That was mostly just the Old Scout that was sourced from MGP. But now that they're making their own stuff, I really like this bottle for a lower end wheated bourbon. Let's give it some tasting notes. It smells like peanut butter and clove. Yeah, really clove heavy actually. It's got a great finish on it that lasts a long time. It does have a lot of peanut on it, but also your classic bourbon flavors, brown sugar, vanilla. The nice thing that I like about this bottle, it doesn't give me any of the funk you get off of a younger wheated bourbon. I don't know how old this is. It does not say on the bottle. It says straight bourbon whiskey, so it's at least 2 years, but that's all we know. But standard makers, standard Larceny and Weller Special Reserve have a very young wheat thing going on that I consider to be like I'm smelling a barn, and I don't like that smell on a wheated bourbon. So for me, I don't really like the younger wheated bourbons as much. This does not drink like a younger wheated bourbon. I really like this bottle. I highly recommend it, and it's better than Weller Special Reserve in my opinion. When I first landed my Weller Special Reserve, got it from Texas. I was so excited to open it. Before I even tasted it, I had my wife pour me a blind between it, Big Level, and Maker's 46, and Weller Special Reserve came in third. Their other products are great, but their lowest end product, Weller Special Reserve, is not a bottle that should be allocated. It's a bottom shelf bottle, and there are better bottles of wheated bourbons out there. Number 2, I'm gonna get another bit of flack in the comments for this one because this is another really well-loved bottle. But when we're considering the fact that this was 2020's Whiskey of the Year, I can go ahead and call it overhyped because this is not a bottle that I enjoy. I am becoming a proof snob. I really like Stag Junior. I really like the higher end, the higher proof bourbons. I love my Knob Creek single barrels. I love 1792 full proof. A lot of higher proof options. Love them. This tastes like I'm drinking fire, and I don't know why it tastes so hot. But I would guess that this bottle is 140-50 proof if I didn't know. And it sits at 121. This to me drinks much hotter than Stag Junior, and Stag Junior is 10% higher I'm sorry, 10 proof points higher. So it just kind of tells you, for me, the heat on this one, just not for me. It has a little bit of that young wheated bourbon funk on it, and it's just not a bottle I really enjoy. If you love it, like I said before, great. You won't have to fight me to buy one of these. So if I see one of these on the shelf, even at retail, I'm gonna be walking right past it. And I'll be walking over to the Makers section, because Makers Private Selections are another wheated bourbon, similar proof point. This one happens to be 108.9, and everyone's gonna be unique. This one I have here was done by Total Wine, and they tell you which staves they used right on the bottle. Currently, I know I can get some from Albertsons and Safeway in my area, and Total Wine has some new ones already. I just saw a video from Whiskey Row where they reviewed one called She's My Cherry Pie. They're all over the place. A lot of people pick these, and they get to choose which staves go in. I'm sure they're not all home runs, but the ones I've tasted I really enjoy. And this one, the Spice French Toast here, is a really unique desserty bourbon that tastes like it's got a lot of age on it. It's probably not that old. All these extra staves are gonna add additional aging notes onto this bourbon, so you get this nice quality where you have this young, sweet bourbon, but you also have these drying oak qualities to it. Maker's Mark Private Selections, they're probably available in your area, and they're better than Larceny Barrel Proof. All right, guys. So if we're gonna talk about the #1 most hyped bottle, I just don't see how I can talk about the #1 most overhyped bottle without talking about Blanton's. Now, I know I've talked about Blanton's before. I know I have, and I'm probably beating a dead horse at this point, but I like this bottle a lot. It's a good bottle, but people overhype it so bad. And at retail, they're worth it. Anything over retail, even $5 to $10 more than retail, they're just not worth it. Retail's about 60 bucks. You see this for 70, I'm walking right past it. But there's a bottle I haven't talked about yet on this channel, and that is gonna be the John J. Bowman Pioneer Spirit Virginia Straight Bourbon Whiskey. Higher proof, 100 proof. I did just buy this one, so it's not open yet, but before I bought it, I did have a pour. I've had a pour of it a number of times, so I'm not just blowing smoke here. I do like this bottle. I have had this bottle. I would say that it's comparable to Blanton's, and in many ways it's better because you get a little bit more complexity off that higher proof. 90 is a really good starting point for a proof for bourbon for me. This is sitting at 93, but the 100 proof, you just get a little bit more flavor. And they're actually the same mash bill. This is a Buffalo Trace product that's sent over to Virginia to age. So they're cousins. They're cousins here. And it is a single barrel as well. So, shout out to the other channels that have talked about John J. Bowman when they've talked about Blanton's. I know Tipsy Whiskey Shenanigans did when he talked about Blanton's. And, shout out to them. I'm not copying them by doing that. I just feel like when you're talking about Blanton's, you have to talk about how John J. Bowman is a more readily available bottle at a better proof for a better price. And this one's becoming overhyped. Let's jump on this one before this one does. I really appreciate you guys watching. Let me know what you think I should do next in the comments, and don't forget to hit that like button. See you on the next one.